the Kill Count, where we tally up the victims in all our favorite horror movies. I'm James A. Janice, and today we're looking at Candyman 3, Day of the Dead, released in 1999. While the second Candyman was a mostly harmless snooze fest that spent all of its time trying to emulate the original, Candyman 3 is a little shitbird of a film that desperately wanted to fit in with the Scream-inspired teenage slasher craze. It's a shame to see this once cerebral horror franchise churn out what might as well be a made-for-TV movie. You know, if it wasn't for all the nudity. A lot of that skin is provided by the latest leading lady in Candyman's long line of blonde obsessions, Donna D'Errico, who starred in Baywatch and was a mid-90s Playmate of the Year. Yep, checks out. She plays Caroline McKeever, the daughter of Annie Tarrant, who we saw as a little girl at the end of Farewell to the Flesh. So hey, at least the franchise is still bothering to maintain continuity. But every other aspect of this movie, the story, the editing, the acting, is completely mediocre at best. The only standout part of the film, as to be expected, is Tony Todd's performance as Candyman. This may not be a good movie, but Tony Todd never lets you know that he knows it. Dude's still giving it his all. How many kills will we find in this tacky, tacked-on end of a trilogy? Let's find out and get to them. The movie begins with a woman in her underwear, and if you like the sight of that, well, don't you worry, because I don't think this lady even knows how to wear pants. Caroline McKeever, Candyman's great-granddaughter, finds herself in a white bathroom, sparse and spotless, save for Candyman's motto written on the wall in blood, and a tub full of blood. And a hand? Not sure what's going on here, but you probably shouldn't be staring into that Candyman portal, Care Bear. See, look, now he's in the bathroom with you, ready to give us all a kill? Nope, just a title card. Because after the opening credits, Caroline is still alive and in her underwear, and boy does she gots the need to sketch something awful. Caroline already knows about her lineage and the backstory of her hook-handed ancestor, which she relays to her roommate Tamara for the sake of any viewers who may have had some brain damage since watching the first two films. She repeats the same expository info we've all heard 1,000 times. Hook hand, honeycomb.
Call his name 5 times into a mirror and he appears.
Yep, the whole damn thing. Whereas the first film took place in Chicago and the second in New Orleans, this third outing is unapologetically LA. And following in the second film's tradition of taking place during a holiday, this one is centered around Day of the Dead. Thus the film's subtitle, in case you were mistaking it for the third Romero zombie flick, which I'll get to one day, I promise. Caroline works at an art gallery that's currently setting up for a Candyman exhibit, even though she doesn't want to exploit her ancestors' work like this.
I want people to know Daniel Robitaille the man, not some twisted urban myth.
But the man in charge, this Miguel dude, refuses to let free advertising go to waste, so he insists they open the exhibit on Day of the Dead using the Candyman hook. The gallery opens with lots of people in attendance, including 2 LA cops who are so single-mindedly racist, they have nothing better to do than harass this Hispanic art exhibitor.
Your kind's always up to something.
Also in attendance are exactly the type of people Caroline was worried about. The kind that interprets Candyman's murders as some sort of ethos.
What's blood for, if not for shedding?
Transporting oxygen from the lungs to cells and tissues? Go listen to Here Comes Science, you dummies. For what feels like the 15th time, we hear the story of Candyman's life and death, delivered by Miguel to impress his audience and gain some applause from them, even the ones who haven't quite perfected their clapping form yet. But for those of you who want some variety in your exposition, this time through we get something you never really needed to see. A Candyman sex scene. Talk about sweets for the sweet. We also get another depiction of his death, which is different than the one we saw in the second movie, but I find that forgivable since he is an urban legend and all. In front of the portrait of her namesake, Caroline tries to argue that Daniel Robitaille was just a man, and that the killer Candyman legend isn't even real.
The soul of a good man is reflected in these paintings. That is what's real.
To prove that it's all a bunch of malarkey, she says his name in the mirror while people look on chomping cigars. She says Candyman a 5th time and nothing happens at first, but then...
Do not tempt the powers of darkness, for the hour of death
Is that her?
Holy shit, it's Angry Prince! Nah, just kidding. It's Jesus Garcia, the greaser boyfriend Rod from Nightmare on Elm Street, who was hanged by Freddy Krueger in his jail cell. He's playing a guy named David, an actor who was hired by Miguel to cause a scene at the gallery. Caroline's not a fan of his work, so she leaves to go home. But while waiting for the subway, she hears the same sing-songy voice we've come to know and love. Yo, is that motherfucker floating on bees? When'd you learn that one, Candyman? Why don't you take a step onto solid ground and tell Caroline what you're here for?
I came for you.
Always looking for another Helen Lyle, huh, man? He tells her to be leaving him, and she faints on the spot, as women are wont to do in the presence of our dearest Candyman. She comes to on a bench conveniently outside of Miguel's apartment, which she enters to find empty. Flashbacks show what happened to Miguel and his date Lena. They were naked and eating some honeycomb when Candyman decided that he wanted in on these sticky fun times. With a burst of bees through the window, Miguel's date Lena is attacked by digital insects, all while the clumps of fake bees glued to her body grow more and more numerous. But it's Miguel that becomes the first to join the kill count when Candyman appears behind him and kills him by, you probably guessed it, stabbing him in the back with his hook. Lena isn't far behind on the count though, eventually succumbing to a death by bee stings. Not gonna get any sympathy from him, Lena. He's been there and done that. Caroline discovers both of their bodies and then has to talk to some cops about it, just like every other protagonist in these movies. At first, it's a couple of nice detectives, including one played by Ernie Hudson Jr., but pretty soon, the incredible shit-stained partners take over after they finish yucking it up about Miguel's death and solidifying their racist bona fides.
Why don't you go shoot some hoops?
The one named Kraft asks Caroline about that David dude, and also, because all the Daniel Robitaille paintings were just stolen from Miguel's gallery, about Candyman. Caroline refuses to cooperate though.
There's no such thing as a Candyman.
Oh, Caroline, you know he hates it when people say that. The cops drop Caroline off at her apartment in Patty's pub, and during a little shower cry providing some sorely lacking TNA, Caroline has a flashback to a time she was walking around in her underwear and found her topless mom dead in the bathtub. The death was ruled a suicide, even though, like, look at that neck, man. That'd be one difficult damn suicide. And sorry, Caroline, I don't think you're gonna be able to stop the bleeding there. She remembers that her mom used to talk about calling Candyman's name in more flashbacks that drive home how they did not get Kelly Rowan back from the second film to reprise her role as Annie. Hey, also, wait a minute, this movie has that little girl who was born at the end of the second movie as a 30-year-old woman. The second movie took place presumably in 1995 when it was released. Does Candyman 3 take place in a fictional 2025? Where are the flying cars? On her way out the door to ride her hoverboard around town, Caroline runs into David, who just got done getting chewed out by those racist cops. And here's where I'll give the movie a little bit of credit, because it's at least trying to continue the racial themes of this series. Caroline suggests that since he's innocent of Miguel's murder, David has nothing to worry about. But he says that things don't work like that for dudes who look like him.
What fucking planet do you live on?
So yeah, points for effort, I guess. But the end result is pretty graceless, since those asshole cops are cartoonish caricatures of racists. David tells Caroline that he heard a gang was responsible for the gallery robbery, so she insists that they find this gang and clear David's name of wrongdoing. To the hoverboard! Wait, that's not a hoverboard. This future sucks. They end up at a bar in Boyle Heights, where David talks to a dude named Tino, and Caroline has hallucinations in the bathroom of both Candyman and her bloody topless dead mom. Ooh, and she got them scary eyes too. David busts into the bathroom and finds her fainting, as per usual, then takes her back home to meet his daughter Christina and his grandmother, whose credited character name is Abuela, even though, you know, that's just the Spanish word for grandmother. Abuela supposedly has spiritual healing powers, which she activates by starting into a Marx Brothers routine. Her healing ceremony involves Caroline saying Candyman into an egg, which is then cracked onto a plate. And while at first I thought this was a sad waste of protein, turns out this whole thing might be working after all, since now that egg yolk is bleeding. See, that's why you go over easy instead of sunny side up. Little less runny that way. Fewer bees in there too. David takes Caroline home, where they have drinks to the blandest soft rock I've ever heard. Hey, remember Philip Glass? Miss him as much as I do? If so, too bad, because this movie's soundtrack is more likely to have generic Spanish guitar playing during its third or whatever sex scene. At least this softcore scene gets interrupted by Candyman, who appears in bed just long enough to spit out his catchphrase.
Be my victim.
Yo, dude, ain't that your direct descendant? He cuts her face and she wakes up screaming, but now David's missing from her apartment and Tamara is there instead, telling her to knock it off with all that Candyman nonsense.
The Candyman does not exist.
Oh shit, you've gone and done it now. This isn't real enough for you, Tamara? Candyman's not real enough for you? Guess your dead body's being held up by a strong gust of wind then, huh? Candyman tells Caroline to surrender because there's no reason for her to keep living, then disappears in front of her eyes. Since there's another body, we get another run-in with the police, because if they did it in the first movie, might as well keep doing it in the sequels, right? And also, in case you were starting to forget that these cops are real pieces of shit, Kraft makes sure to remind you by hitting Caroline in the face before his partner Sacco stops him and puts her in the backseat of his cruiser. Sacco mocks Caroline and her family's obsession with Candyman, and he pays for the taunting immediately when he's stabbed by Candyman with his hook, spraying blood all over the car. Oh shit, and he stabbed him through the mouth too? Awesome! Sacco actually lives long enough to deliver a jump scare as Caroline climbs out of the car, but he dies in the driver's seat as she slips on a police jacket and runs away. With David held captive in Candyman's lair, all covered in bees, Caroline returns to his abuela to get some help. But first, better strip in the bathroom and slip into something a little more comfortable. There we go, much more cozy and bra-free. Abuela gives Caroline a shakedown and tells her that she must destroy the good, for without it, the evil will die, since evil and good need each other to exist or something? I don't really know what she's talking about. And I don't think Caroline gets it either.
I don't understand, Abuela.
Yeah, didn't think so. And the hand on the head ain't helping, lady. Oh, actually, never mind. It did help a bit, since Caroline now realizes what the good is that must be destroyed.
The paintings.
That Tino dude from the Boyle Heights bar calls and tells Caroline there's a member of the painting stealing gang waiting there to talk to her. She rushes to the bar and meets the gang member who agrees to take her to the paintings, which he says are inside this rundown building. I mean, he ain't lying, the paintings are in there, but so is this prick with a hook, who thanks Caroline for coming before knocking her out. She has a daytime soap opera dream about David and his daughter, wherein David gets gutted by a hook through his back, but then she wakes up with a fucking ball gag in her mouth, facing a strung out gang of goths. They're the ones who stole the gallery paintings after being moved by what they saw at the exhibit.
What's blood for?
Not for shedding.
We are his new congregation.
Oh man, could we get like the old congregation back? Or no congregation? No congregation's fine too, as long as we can get rid of these people. Oh, good, she's doing the mirror thing. This shouldn't take long. And it doesn't. As Caroline watches, Candyman takes his hook to the gang's ringleader, then proceeds to kill all of them off screen. Although we don't see the slaughter take place, we did see 9 of these carefully crafted punks brooding around a second ago, and we do see most of their bodies on screen in just a minute. So let's go ahead and throw all of them on the list. Oh, and looks like the leaders become rat food now. Gross. Candyman gives Caroline the usual offer. He'll let someone live, in this case David, as long as she's willing to
Be my victim.
his victim of a snuggle attack. Wow, it's super effective. Caroline is fast asleep. Sometime later, she wakes up, de-ball gags, sees the dead goths, and shouts angrily into the air.
You took everything from me! My family! My mother!
Oh boy, Virginia Madsen she is not. Why don't you just grab that hook and get on out of here, Caroline? Be sure to avoid the body that swings down like Bob's in Halloween though. She goes to a shed that has a knockoff mural of the one from Candyman's OG lair, then wanders around a bunch of chains and blue lighting until she comes across Candyman's new lair. Don't you love how a little decoration will turn any house into a home? Like a painting! Or bees and skulls? That's a little morbid. Let's go back to the painting. You didn't need to get that close to it though. Jesus, movie. Caroline finds David hanging out with some bees, and after she lowers him down and takes the hooks out of his back, Candyman shows up to collect his end of the bargain. She runs back to destroy his portrait, but has a surprisingly hard time crawling her way up the little dirt hill it's at the top of. Come on, lady. Helen Lyle scaled a mountain of trash during a cold Chicago night. Where's your moxie? This is just pathetic. What do you have to say about all this, Candyman?
My victim.
Oh, same thing you always say. Well, that's not gonna help her get up this hill, dude. Down she goes, I guess. That's okay. Candyman can just come down to her level and pull her in closer with his words of living as a legend alongside him, her grandpa dear. Well, I just said y'all are related. Come on! Maybe have some of those bees sting the taste of your descendant out of your mouth there, Daniel. And there's no need to go flashing her your bee chest either, you pervert. Caroline snaps out of her trance and finally finds her footing enough to get up that hill of bones and gray stuff. As Candyman pleads with her to stop, she cuts open the painting's canvas with some hook swipes that also tear the real Candyman asunder. A candle catches the painting on fire, which causes Candyman to do the same, and then oh boy, he does this. This happens to him. I guess we'll count that as a kill. Caroline runs over to Daniel, and this movie can finally end now, right? Wrong. Everyone knows that Candyman's death was just the appetizer here. What we really want to see in our climax is what happens with that racist cop dude. Yeah! Kraft, who was fired from the force, is all pissed and sweaty and throws out a few slurs before threatening Caroline with the Candyman MO.
I'm gonna split you open from groin to gullet.
But of course, before he can do that, he's shot through the back by Detective Matthews. Not the Donnie Wahlberg character, but the Ernie Hudson Jr. character, who's apparently able to shoot his targets from around corners. What's going on there, dude? You got them bullet bending skills like in Wanted? Oh well. Any last words, Kraft?
Candyman.
Cool. Caroline blames the Candyman murders on Kraft, thus ending the legend of the real Candyman, since Detective Matthews' police force accepts the explanation without any kind of investigation. The movie ends with a cheesy golden hour cemetery picnic, where Caroline, David, and his kid hug each other atop her mother's grave. Hope she doesn't pop out and start asking where her cake is. How many kills did Candyman 3 give us? You know, besides killing this franchise for 20 years? Let's find out and get to the numbers. Right after I slip into something a little more comfortable, like a skimpy little tank top. Yeah! I'm so braless and free! 16 people died in Candyman 3, the most of the entire gosh darn series. The victims consisted of 7 women and 9 men, one of them being Candyman, like always, and with a runtime of 93 minutes, that left us with a kill on average every 5.81 minutes. I'll give the golden chainsaw for coolest kill to Detective Sacco, cause his death was straight wacko. A hook through the mouth and out the back of a car seat, that's some vinyl ripping greatness right there. Dull machete for lamest kill will go to the other racist cop, Kraft, who was shot in the back. If it's one thing we've learned from the Candyman sequels, it's that gunshots to the back make for boring kills. And that's it. Candyman 3 Day of the Dead was released in 1999, possibly premiering on HBO, and was the last we had of the character for 20 years. But next summer, we'll have a reboot of sorts, directed by Nia DaCosta and co-written and produced by Jordan Peele. I'm really looking forward to it. Now that we've had all this candy, we've got to get ourselves to the dentist. So we'll do that next week, but until then, I'm James A. Janice. This has been the Kill Count. Thanks a lot for watching this Kill Count. I want to thank some patrons like Benjamin Luke, J83KY, Emily Freeman, Saul Rodriguez, Mark Padilla, Casey Sharp, and Christian Courtney. Time is running out for you to pre-order the Dead Meat Collector's Edition of In Search of Darkness, the 80s horror documentary. Link in the description for how you can pre-order it and all the cool stuff you'll get. Be good people.